Man, I don't even know how to start this video. So this would be kind of like an impromptu thing where I'm kind of talking as I think about what I want to say. There's no script. So tonight I kind of want to talk about truth and how it is by nature absolute. And the reason why I'm talking about this particular topic is because I've been actually talking with a friend of mine, a friend who I've been boys with for over 25 years or so. And we've been having all these in-depth type conversations lately, and we've been talking about the topic of relativism, although he might not know that term. Postmodern, again, he might not know that term, but he's definitely one who claims to be a dual, rather he believes, like postmodernists do, that there's no such thing as absolute truth, and he's very careful not to say things are right or wrong or good or bad. So tonight we were talking about one of my posts on IG, Instagram, where I vented my frustration with the transgender movement and how, because of their narcissism, and this is not to every transgender person, by the way, but there's a certain group amongst that movement who feel like they're entitled to everybody groveling at their feet. And I call them the narcissists, those people in particular. Anyhow, there was a post where he called me to talk about, I'm using his words now, the negative connotations of my post, and how I could have communicated that message better. Now, looking for an opportunity to make sense of what I've been trying to show him for maybe a few months now, namely that there is truth and there's good and bad, etc., etc. I tried to ask him, why I was wrong. Ultimately, to get him to say that this was wrong. Obviously, I don't agree what I said was wrong, but I wanted him to come to terms. And here's where it gets interesting. I hope I'm making sense because, again, I'm just kind of communicating off top, right? So anyway, so we're talking, and then he's like, this is how you communicated your message, T, he said. And he's not using bad or wrong. He's using vague terms because maybe he's become masterful like that, I think. He's careful. So nonetheless, he proceeds to tell me that it wasn't in good taste. And so I'm asking him why. Why do you think it's not in good taste? And trying to get him to say that it's not good or it's wrong, right? And finally, we come to a kind of a fork in the road where he has to say that it's wrong because he's using all these synonyms, different words and or phrases to communicate that what I said wasn't good or wasn't right? But he's not saying that I wasn't good or right. So when I try to press him, and I'm like, dude, you're saying that this has a negative connotation. Is a negative connotation good or bad? He's like, I'm not saying good or bad. But I say to him, you're saying it has a negative connotation. And words have meaning, right? And we just can't, just because we want to not shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak, we can't be so afraid to shy away from end conclusion. If you say, therefore, that, or for example, that what I'm saying has a negative connotation, is a negative connotation good? Is that a positive thing or a good thing? Again, he's not going there. So ultimately and finally, we kind of ended on a bad note. I don't think it's going to kill our friendship or anything, but I think we're guys and we need time to just chill. But still, what frustrated me, and I'll say exactly what frustrated me in a second. I just want to kind of jump to my point. My point is simply this. We live in a time in our society where, because we, especially Christians, I'm talking to Christians here, because we were so unwilling to equivocate on, no, I'll say it another way, because we weren't willing to say what truth is, because we were so trying to be so loving and all that, and all that's fine. We still want to do that. We still want to be gracious in our own approach. But because we weren't so matter of fact, we, I think, given a foothold to a lot of people, especially people who are postmodernists, because now that's the mindset of society. This is the mindset that, there's no such thing as truth, and your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, it's all equal. And that statement in itself, by the way, is a contradiction of the terms. If you say there's no such thing as truth, you actually mean that it's the truth, and therefore you contradict your whole, argument. That aside, he didn't get that either. That statement too, by the way, is inconsistent with the way in which people live, and that's the problem. And that's the problem what happened tonight. My friend says there's no such thing as truth, but he's calling me because he's realizing, from his point of view at least, that I'm doing something wrong. And to be fair, I may have done something wrong. I don't think I have, but just hear me out for a second. I may have done something wrong. But again, because he's unwilling to admit that I was wrong, he's not realizing that calling me the manner in which he did. First, it started off peaceful, I suppose, and then it became heated. He's not realizing he's going through all this painstaking opportunity to get his point across, to make his point and all this, and he's not willing to say I'm wrong and killing his own argument. He's calling me with a purpose, namely to show me that I'm wrong, but he doesn't want to say I'm wrong, so therefore he's realizing like he has some a contradiction here. He's realizing that what he's saying he believes versus what he feels he believes is not being cohesive at the moment. They're kind of like mutually exclusive. And so I was trying so hard, maybe for like 45 minutes, I think we spoke for a little bit under an hour. I'm trying to explain to him, like, bro, you're being really inconsistent here. We've been talking for months on some serious talk. Usually our talks are more jovial and we just laugh and that sort of thing. But lately, I think it's God. It's giving us the opportunity to talk about more important things. And of course, I'm glad for that. But it's really difficult and frustrating to talk with somebody who's unwilling to admit that there's truth, especially when their own life dictates the reality of a truth. He's calling me to communicate a truth. Again, namely, that what I'm saying isn't right from his point of view. But he's not saying that it's not right. So he's saying, he's communicating via his approach, via his emotional pleading to me that, yo, son, don't do that. What you're saying is wrong, but he's not actually using the words because he thinks if he uses it, then he's contradicting. Of course he is, but he's realizing, I think, that he's contradicting himself. So rather than actually saying the truth, he's shying away. This incidentally reminds me of what a scripture says in Romans 1. It talks about how we know the truth innately, but we suppress that truth because we love sin. It puts it another way. I'll quote the verse verbatim. Men suppress truth in unrighteousness. Simply meaning that we suppress the truth because we are unrighteous people who love sin, right? So I'm opening up the verse and exegeting it, or explaining the verse to those of you who might watch this, so you can understand what Romans 1 means. But again, this is the time we're living in where people are so hardened to the truth, and there's a sense in which this has always been the case, but life kind of ebbs and flows, and so you have periods and times that are more matter of fact and more definite, where you see men or people in particular just hardened by their sin. This incidentally is why I wrote the post I wrote about concerning that whole transgender movement. Now, I want to make it clear for those who are watching, while I don't agree with that lifestyle, I'm not saying I hate gay people and or transgenders. I don't think the other extreme is good. The other extreme being hateful towards them and that sort of thing. I think that's absolutely insane and wicked. But not agreeing doesn't mean I don't love you as a person. I just despise that practice, and I especially despise it in the context in which I spoke, namely the people who are forcibly trying to get people to cower to their beliefs. A person who goes, the latest news report, who goes into a fast food restaurant or drives through the restaurant, and because the person at the window assumes that the person is a man because his credit card says a man's name, he gets all upset, and he pulls out his cell phone and he begins to record the conversation, begins to demand to see the manager. The manager comes out, they're having this exchange. The manager is expressing apologies profusely, trying to get the person to calm down, yet like a woman. Incidentally, I won't go there, but the manager's apologizing profusely, and this person is irrational in so much that he's not willing to, just let it go. It's not a big deal. We all have issues we all stub our toes. I call it stub our toe issues. We all have those, right? This is not a big thing. There's no need to get cameras involved. But these people demand, and again, I'm not talking about everybody within that community, just a certain narcissistic type that demands people to see their point of view at the expense of not seeing the other person's point of view, right? It's the essence of narcissism. And so this person continues, and this is the funny part, I think. He finally asked the manager, what do you think I am, a man or a woman? And so the manager, realizing that he's kind of backed into a corner, is really hesitant to say, one or the other. And he says, in response, I'll call you what you want. Again, being really apologetic and actually really sweet, nice. But the guy continues to press him in the corner, like, what do you see when you look at me? And so finally, after being really hesitant and walking on eggshells, as it were, he says, I'm sorry, I see a man, right? And so the guy, of course, gets really mad. The transgender person gets upset. And so this is the funny part, though. He takes the camera and he turns it towards the audience. So now we're seeing what the manager was seeing. And son looked like a dude. Like, what do you expect? Were you expecting us to say, I see what you see? We don't, and that's the problem. And we need to be able to live in a community, or life in general. We need to have a kind of a grace whereby I don't have to see what you see and or agree, and we can still coexist peaceably. And that's the issue with these people. They don't want to coexist. They want their point of view at the expense of you getting canceled, or whatever the new term is nowadays. So anyway, I say all that to say this. I kind of got off track, just like the title of my off topic, just like the title of my podcast, off topic. I'm good at that. My point simply is this. There's 2 points. Christians, don't run away from the truth. It's going to sound hard. It's going to sound unloving. If we preach what Jesus preached, we're going to expect to be hated like Jesus was hated. That's something we got to come to terms with. We can't run away from this reality. Second point, it's actually through these difficult type conversations and situations where people can actually be saved. The tiptoeing around the truth, the pandering to them, in so much that we refuse to say what's actually right, is why the lunacy persists, because we're being cowardice in that regard. But we need to stand up for truth. Again, be as wise as you can, be as gracious as you can, but expect this. Here's a scripture that comes to mind. No one who aims to live godly in this present age will in fact, or rather everyone who lives godly in this present age will in fact see persecution. So it's not something we can shy away from. It is what it is. It's going to occur. It's going to happen. But don't shy away from the truth. Say the truth. Say it as gracious as you can. Say it as loving as you can. And with the words, show action. So that if God is pleased to work in their lives, they can remember when they're really upset with you, your action and your lifestyle. Maybe that'll help them, I think. There was another point. I didn't write this down, so there's nothing to look at to kind of catch myself where I'm kind of going off track. But suffice it to say, and I don't want to make this too long, fight for truth, stand on truth. This is not the time to pander people or pander to people. Not the time to be soft and, there's a time for everything under the sun. A time for war, a time to take an approach whereby we're really sweet and sensitive in the way in which we say things. And I suppose there's always a time for that. But even within that time, there's also a time to yell at people, that there's a judgment, there's a fire, as it were, coming. You're walking off a cliff, whatever analogy you choose to use. This is a time of danger, and we don't want to whisper to people. We want to, as lovingly as we can and as gracious as we can, use whatever mental prowess you have, use logic, use whatever philosophical arguments you can use to kind of undergird the truth of the gospel. But use everything at your means to prove your point, even sarcasm, because that's necessary sometimes. I think sarcasm is best in a certain context, namely in this context where people are so silly with regard to their own worldview, when they're saying there's no such thing as truth, and you actually showing them the silliness of that all, and just showing them how stupid that is on its face and how inconsistent their own lives are with that claim. And I think when a person is left to him or herself, when there's no one else around where they can show off and pretend to be more tough than they are, and they're just there by themselves with themselves, and they're thinking, they can actually recognize truth. So I hope I made some sense. I didn't want to babble. I feel like I have. So I'll end it. Peace.